Amina loved the warm breeze that brushed her face as she pedaled down Maple Street. It was a quiet afternoon, and the sun felt just right, neither too hot nor too cool. Birds chirped from the tall oak trees that lined the sidewalk, and their melodies mixed with the soft thump of Amina's bicycle tires on the pavement. Marley, her golden retriever, trotted alongside her, tongue lolling happily. Ever so often, he would glance up at her with bright eyes, as if to say, "Is this not the best day ever?" Amina grinned and rang her small bell, the clear tinkle. Echoing through the calm neighborhood, she wore her favorite pink sneakers and a simple, blue dress dotted with tiny white flowers. Her hair, black and curly, caught little glints of sunlight as it bounced with each turn of the petals. Amina felt free and light-hearted, as though nothing in the world could touch her joyful mood. Marley's coat shone in the afternoon rays, each strand of fur glowing almost gold. He sniffed at the grass near the curb, sometimes pausing to chase a stray leaf that drifted in the breeze. When she slowed down, he bumped her leg gently with his head, urging her onward. On this block, families had lived for years, neighbors knew each other by name and waved from their porches. Mr. Patel watered his flower bed, humming a soft tune, while Mrs. Rodriguez hung laundry that fluttered like flags in the wind. Further down the street, little twins played hopscotch on a driveway, their chalk marks bright against the gray concrete. Mina waved at them, and they waved back with giggles. She felt safe here, surrounded by friendly faces and warm greetings. But today, something felt different. Maybe it was the way the breeze whispered through the tree branches, or the way Marley paused mid-step, his ears alert. As they neared the corner where Elm Street joined Maple, Amina noticed a group of older kids gathered by a driveway. Leaned against a parked car, arms crossed, as if waiting. The biggest boy wore a red shirt and scuffed sneakers. His friends stood around him, their faces hidden beneath baseball caps. Amina's heart skipped a beat, but she kept pedaling, reminding herself there was nothing to fear. Marley stayed close, his body tense, ready to protect. She slowed down. Giving them space, the twins waved again, but these older kids did not wave back. Instead, they exchanged looks and smirked. Amina gripped her handlebars, breathing a little faster. She told herself it was just her imagination. Maybe they were saying hello in their own way. Marley let out a low growl, and Amina's stomach turned. She crouched down to pat him, whispering, "It's okay, buddy," even though her voice trembled. Marley's leash lay loose in her hand, but she tightened her grip, ready to pull him back if needed. As they passed, one of the boys stepped forward. He reached out a hand and knocked gently on Amina's bike frame. "Hey, little girl," he said, his tone rough. "Where are you going?" Amina swallowed. She tried to sound calm. "Just riding around," she replied softly. Marley growled again, louder this time. The boy laughed and nudged her bike. Amina stumbled, her wheel catching on a small crack in the pavement. She almost fell, but Marley's quick movement steadied her. Then, the boy's friends closed in from behind, surrounding her like a ring of stones. Amina's heart pounded against her ribs. Her breath came in short gasps, and she squeezed Marley's leash tighter. The dog stood between her and the teenagers, body low and protective. Amina felt his warmth through the leash, and it comforted her. She focused on Marley's steady presence, letting it calm her racing thoughts. She tried to imagine herself back in her room, cuddled under her blanket with a storybook, safe and happy. But the rough voices of the kids were there, poking holes in her calm. One of the boys reached out and tried to take her phone from the basket on her handlebars. "Give it here," he demanded. His voice was laced with cruelty. Amina shook her head, voice quivering. "No, please don't." She glanced nervously at Marley. He snarled, showing his teeth. The boy paused, surprised by the dog's ferocity. Amina felt both relief and shame. Relief that Marley stood by her, shame that she looked like she needed protecting. She pressed closer to the dog, hugging him. "Thank you," she whispered to him. Though he could not understand words, the biggest boy scoffed and pushed Amina's bike hard. It wobbled dangerously, and she had to hop off to keep from falling. Marley leaped forward, barking, but the boy shoved him aside. Marley stumbled, then recovered quickly, barking again. Amina's eyes filled with tears as she knelt to hold Marley's collar, checking him for injuries. He looked up at her, unharmed but clearly upset. She whispered soothing words, brushing his fur. "You did great," she said, wiping her own tears. Suddenly there was a shout from across the road. Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly neighbor with kind eyes, hurried over. "Hey! Ah! What do you think you're doing?" she called, her voice firm. "Ah!" The teens froze, glancing at each other. The threat of an adult watching seemed to break their confidence. Amina stood, gathering Marley's leash in one hand and her bike in the other. Her heart still raced. But hope sparkled too. Mrs. Jenkins reached her side and slipped an arm around Amina's shoulders. "Are you all right, dear?" Mrs. Jenkins asked, concern lining her face. Amina nodded, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, thank you." Marley settled next to Amina, his tail thumping softly against the pavement. The bullies hung back, unsure, their earlier bravado gone. After a tense moment, they muttered insults under their breath and hurried away, heads down. Mrs. Jenkins watched them go, then turned back to Amina and Marley. Amina felt a mix of relief and gratitude. The sun still shone, and the breeze still carried the faint scent of jasmine from Mrs. Rodriguez's garden. Birds sang overhead as if nothing had happened. Amina knew things had changed. She felt a new bond with Marley, deeper than ever. She hugged him tight, and he nuzzled her neck. Mrs. Jenkins smiled kindly. "Let's walk you home," she said. "You both deserve a rest." As they walked back, Amina glanced at the empty corner where the bullies had stood. Houses looked the same, the street the same, yet it felt different now, like a place where kindness and courage could stand up to meanness. Marley walked proudly beside Amina, head held high. She patted him on the head and whispered, "Good boy." And in that quiet moment, Amina realized that with love, loyalty, and a brave heart, even the scariest moments could be faced and overcome. The next morning, Amina woke to the sound of Marley's gentle panting. He lay curled at the foot of her bed, his warm body a comfort against the cool morning air. Sunlight spilled through her curtains, painting golden stripes on her blanket. For a moment, she felt safe. Then memories of yesterday's fear came rushing back. Her heart pounded as she sat up, wrapping the covers around her shoulders. Marley lifted his head, eyes soft with concern. Amina reached down and stroked his fur. "It's okay, boy," she whispered. "I'm here." Marley wagged his tail, and his calm presence eased her. She took a deep breath and swung her legs. Out of bed. In her room, trophies and ribbons from school lined the shelves, but none meant as much to her as Marley's loyalty. She dressed quickly in her favorite blue jeans and a white shirt. Her mother knocked and entered, carrying Amina's backpack. "How are you this morning?" she asked, voice gentle. Amina paused before answering. She felt proud for standing up with Marley by her side, but the fear still lingered. "I'm okay," she said finally. "Marley helped me." Her mother knelt beside her and hugged her tightly. "You were very brave," she said, "and Marley is a hero." Amina smiled, feeling the warmth of her mother's words. She kissed Marley on the head, and he leaned into her touch. After breakfast, her mother walked her to the bus stop. Other children drifted in small groups, chatting and laughing. When Amina arrived, she noticed their eyes on her and Marley, who followed a few steps behind. "Hi, Amina," called Mia, a classmate. She patted Marley's head. "I heard what happened. That was so scary." Amina shrugged, trying to look casual. "It's okay now," she replied. "Marley kept me safe." The children gathered closer, peppering her with questions. "What did the bullies say? Were you scared? Did Marley bite them?" Amina answered each one, feeling a mix of pride and embarrassment. She assured them Marley only barked and didn't hurt anyone. The school day felt different. Teachers asked if she was all right, and the principal called her into his office. He said he had talked with the families of the teens who cornered her. They were sorry, he said, and would face school consequences. Amina nodded, but her mind drifted to the boys themselves. Would they change? Would they apologize? She hoped. So, for her own peace. Meanwhile, the biggest of the bullies, Marcus, sat at the kitchen table, his own mother's voice a distant echo in his mind. The night before, he had slammed his bedroom door when he got home and thrown himself onto his bed. He stared at the ceiling, replaying Marley's fierce bark and the dog's protective stance. His chest tightened as he remembered Amina's eyes, wide with fear. He hated that image. His mother knocked softly. "Marcus, dinner's ready." He pushed himself up, brushing crumbs from his shirt. In the dining room, his father looked at him with disappointment. "You need to stop acting like that," his father said quietly. "Bullying isn't funny." Marcus mumbled an apology, but his stomach still churned. He didn't mean for things to go so far. He only wanted to show off to his friends. Now those friends avoided him at school, whispering and pointing. He felt lonely, and the guilt settled heavy in his chest. At home, Marcus's mother sat beside him. "I spoke with the principal," she said. "He said you and your friends will have to help clean up the park this weekend." Marcus nodded, head down. He felt ashamed. He thought of Amina, so small beside Marley's strong frame. He wanted to apologize, but didn't know if she would forgive him. Back on Maple Street, neighbors talked quietly over fences about what had happened. Some shook their heads in dismay. Others praised Marley and Amina. Mrs. Rodriguez baked extra banana bread and left a plate on Amina's front porch with a note, "For the bravest girl I know." Amina's mother collected the plate and placed it on the kitchen table. Amina blushed. When she saw it, "They love you here," her mother said. That afternoon, Amina sat under the big oak tree in her backyard. Marley sprawled at her feet. She held a notebook and pen, writing down the story she would tell someday. Not about the fear, but about how courage and kindness can grow in small hearts. Marley rested his head on her lap, eyes half closed. A soft breeze rustled the leaves and bees drifted lazily among the flowers. On Saturday, Amina held her mother's hand as they walked to the park. The sun was bright, and children played on swings and slides. Near the pavilion, Marcus and his friends shoveled mulch and picked up litter. Amina's stomach fluttered when she saw him. He looked different, head bowed, working quietly, alone. She turned to her mother, who nodded gently. "Go on," her mother urged. "You can say hello." Amina took a deep breath and approached. Marley stayed by her side, alert but calm. Marcus froze when he saw her. His shovel hovered over a patch of dirt. "Hi," Amina said softly. Marley sat expectantly, looking between them. Marcus swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," he said, voice low. "I shouldn't have done that." Amina studied him, remembering his cruelty, but she also remembered Mrs. Jenkins's words about forgiveness. "Thank you for saying that," she replied. "I forgive you." Marcus's shoulders relaxed, and for the first time, he looked relieved. He smiled shyly. Marley wagged his tail and nudged Marcus's hand, as if to seal the truce. Nearby, neighbors watched the scene and nodded approval. The teens Marcus had been with paused in their work, uncertain how to react. Then one by one they put down their tools and walked over. "We're sorry too," one said. Another added, "Yeah, we didn't think." Amina accepted their apologies, feeling her heart lighten. She invited them to join her for a game of tag. Hesitant at first, they agreed. Soon, laughter filled the park as children chased each other, including the former bullies. By evening, the park looked neat and clean thanks to everyone's hard work. Parents called their children home, and Amina and her mother strolled back down Maple Street. Marley trotted happily beside them, head held high. Amina felt proud of how things had changed, from fear to friendship, Paul because she and Marley stood together. That night, Amina wrote again in her notebook, pen flying across the page. She wrote about the fear, yes, but also about the power of courage and forgiveness. She wrote about the way her dog, her protector, had brought a neighborhood closer. She wrote about how one apology could heal many wounds. She closed her notebook. She whispered, "Good work today, Marley." He wagged his tail in his sleep, and Amina drifted into peaceful dreams, ready for whatever adventures tomorrow would bring. A few days after the park cleanup, Amina woke early again. But this time she felt a happy flutter in her chest instead of tight fear. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, and Marley was already stretched out on the rug, paws twitching in his sleep. Amina slipped from her bed, careful not to wake her dog, and patted across the wooden floor to the window. Outside, the street looked bright and friendly. She saw the twins playing with chalk, drawing a big heart on the sidewalk with the words, "Be kind inside." Mina smiled, imagining how much the neighborhood had changed in just a week. She dressed quickly and called for Marley. He bounded up beside her, tongue wagging as she filled his bowl with kibble and water. After breakfast, she grabbed her school bag and leash, and they set off toward the bus stop. As they walked, neighbors nodded and waved. Mr. Patel tipped his hat. Mrs. Rodriguez offered a cheerful good morning. Even the twins paused their game to give Marley a pat and a thumbs up to Amina. She laughed softly. It felt as if everyone knew about her brave dog. At school, posters hung in the hallway, reminding students to treat each other with respect. On one wall, there was a photo of Marley standing tall beside Amina under the oak tree. The caption read, "Protect what matters. Courage comes in all shapes and sizes." Amina stopped to study the picture. She felt a bit shy but also proud. Her teacher, Mrs. Lee, passed by and smiled at her. "We wanted to show children that standing up for someone is always right," she said quietly. Amina nodded and looked down at Marley's picture. Thinking how loyal he really was, inside the classroom, children settled into their seats. Amina sat by the window, where she could see Marley's tail disappear down the street. She missed him already, but she knew he would be waiting for her after school, ready for a walk or a game of catch. She opened her notebook, and for a moment the words she had written came to her mind. Courage, kindness, forgiveness. She added community to the list. During math class, Amina let her mind drift. She thought of Marcus, the boy who had been the biggest bully. She wondered how he felt now. Earlier that week, she had seen him helping his mother carry groceries into their house. He had given her a small nod, and she nodded back. It was a strange new friendship, built on a shaky start. But growing stronger, Amina realized that forgiveness was not just an act, but a bridge. It bound people together. After school ended, Amina and Marley headed home along a different route. They passed the basketball court, where Marcus and his friends practiced free throws. When they saw Amina, Marcus paused, wiped sweat from his brow, and walked over with the ball in his hands. Marley stood in front of Amina, alert but relaxed his stance when Marcus crouched down and patted him on the head. "Ready for a game?" Marcus asked shyly. Amina hesitated, then smiled. Sure, they played a simple game. Marcus would shoot, and Amina would fetch the ball for Marley to chase. Marley loved the game. He leaped into the air when Amina threw the ball, fetching it in mid-flight and dropping it at her feet. Marcus laughed, truly laughed, and for a moment Amina forgot that fear she once felt. She saw a new side of him, one that could be kind and fun. Later that afternoon, Amina sat on her front porch with her mother, drinking lemonade. Marley lay across her lap, head resting on her knees. Mrs. Jenkins passed by carrying her mail and stopped to chat. "I'm so proud of you, dear," she said. "You showed everyone that kindness and courage matter." Amina blushed, feeling both humbled and happy. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes, enjoying the warm breeze. That evening, Amina's mother took her aside. "Your school wants to put you and Marley on the local newsletter," she said. "They think your story will inspire more acts of kindness." Amina's eyes grew wide. "Me? Marley?" she asked. "We don't need fame. We just did what felt right." Her mother squeezed her hand. Sometimes telling that story helps others do the same. "Would you like to share?" Amina thought. Of the heart chalk, the laughter in the park, the nods from Marcus and his friends. She nodded. "Okay, but can Marley help me write it?" Over the next 2 days, Amina worked on her article with her mother's help. Of Maple and Elm, the bullies, the fear, and Marley's fierce bark. She wrote how Marcus and his friends cleaned the park, how neighbors baked banana bread, and how chalk hearts appeared on sidewalks. She told readers that courage is not just a roar, it can be a soft whisper or a gentle act. Her, as she typed, tail thumping whenever she paused. When the newsletter came out, Amina was nervous. She sat beside her mother at the kitchen table, opening the folded pages. There was a big photo of Marley mid-lep, catching a ball. Below it was a smaller photo of Amina smiling under the oak tree, chalk heart in the background. Birds ran. Along the side, "Sometimes a dog's love makes more change than any speech," she had written. Amina read it again and again. Then she looked at Marley, whose head was tilted as if he were reading too. The next morning, neighbors held extra. Doors opened for Amina and Marley. The mailman waved her over to get her letters first. Children at the bus stop brought dog treats for Marley, thanks to the sound of his heroics spreading. Amina felt a warm glow. She patted Marley on the head and whispered, "We did it, buddy." He gave a happy bark in return. On the weekend that followed, the neighborhood organized a small fair in the vacant lot near Maple Street. There were booths for lemonade, chalk drawing, and dog treats. At the center stood a new sign, Maple Street Community Fair, celebrating kindness. Amina and Marley manned the dog treat booth. Children lined up with cups of kibble, and Marley sat on command, offering a gentle paw to each new friend. Amina watched as Marcus and his friends played ring toss, laughter echoing across the lot as the sun began to set. Amina walked Marley around the fair, greeting neighbors and thanking volunteers. Her heart swelled with pride. What had started as a scary day turned into something wonderful. She knelt beside Marley, hugged him, and whispered in his ear, "You saved me, and you saved us all." Marley licked her cheek, tail wagging. That night, as Amina closed her notebook, she wrote one final line for part 3 of her story, "In a world that sometimes feels dark. A brave heart and a loyal friend bring the brightest light." She closed the book and looked at Marley, who curled at her feet. The bond between them had grown strong, and their story was far from over. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring new challenges and new chances to show courage and kindness. But for now, she felt content. With Marley by her side and a whole neighborhood behind her, she was ready for whatever came next. It had been 2 weeks since the community fair brought everyone together. Life on Maple Street felt calm and warm after the excitement of the fair. Amina woke one morning to the growl of thunder. She sat up and rubbed her eyes. Dark clouds filled the window above her bed. Cool breeze slipped through the cracks around the window frame. She listened to the wind whistle in the street. Marley padded into her room, tail low and ears twitching. He nudged her hand with his nose. Amina smiled and patted his head. Outside, she could hear leaves rustling high in the trees. She felt a small knot in her stomach. For the first time since the fair, she felt worried. Amina dressed quickly in a warm sweater and jeans. She called Marley and clipped on his leash. Together, they stepped into the front yard. The wind lifted her skirt and tousled her hair. Fur rippled in the breeze. Amina noticed the streetlight flicker as the power line swayed. The twins from next door stood on their porch, holding chalk and drawing shapes on their driveway. Even they paused and watched the sky. Mrs. Rodriguez hung wind chimes at her door, which sang in the gust. Amina wondered how strong the storm would become. She held onto Marley's leash tightly. The dog stayed close and looked at the dark clouds above. Then, a new thunderclap rolled across the street. Rain began with soft drops and gentle pings on the roof. Amina pulled Marley under the awning of the porch. She tilted her head back and let the rain touch her face. Marley shook his fur, sending water droplets in every direction. Amina felt both cold and excited. She had never seen a storm like this in her neighborhood. The wind grew stronger and blew hard against the trees. Soon, the rain turned heavy and pounded the pavement. Cars slowed as they passed by, their lights reflecting on the wet street. Amina heard a loud crack, as if a giant branch had snapped. Marley barked, low and urgent. Amina's heart raced. She knew she should find help quickly. They hurried down the street toward Mrs. Jenkins's house. The rain blurred their view, and the wind tried to push them back home, but Amina kept her feet moving forward. She reached the corner of Elm Street just as thunder boomed. There she saw a large oak branch lying across Mrs. Jenkins's front path. The branch had fallen from above, and it blocked the walkway completely. The storm's wind had sheared it clean from the trunk. Rainwater flowed around its twisted limbs. Mrs. Jenkins stood behind the branch, her coat soaked, her face drawn with fear. Amina called her name softly. Marley tugged her toward the fallen wood. Amina's heart beat fast, but she walked carefully around the branch. She could feel Marley's steady presence guiding her steps. When Amina stepped closer, she saw Mr. Jenkins on the ground. He lay beside the branch with his arm pinned under a smaller limb. His eyes were closed and his breathing was slow. Amina gasped and crouched by his side. Marley barked for help, each bark pressing the urgency in the stormy air. Amina placed a hand on Mr. Jenkins's shoulder. "Please wake up," she said. Marley pressed his paw on Mr. Jenkins's chest as if to help. The wind shook the tree again, and another small branch fell near them. Amina's mother's car came down the street, its headlights bright in the rain. She stopped and jumped out, shouting for help. Amina waved her arm until her mother reached them. Together, they knew they had to call 911. Amina pressed her phone against her ear with one hand. Rain ran down the screen as she spoke quietly into the speaker. "There is a man pinned under a branch," she told the operator. "His name is Robert Jenkins. We need help right away." The operator's calm voice helped Amina stay steady. Marley stood protectively over Mr. Jenkins, growling at each crack of thunder. Within minutes, red and blue lights flashed through the storm. A fire truck rolled up, followed by an ambulance. Firefighters jumped out with axes and saws. They worked together to lift the branch gently. One firefighter lifted Mr. Jenkins onto a stretcher. Another covered him with a dry blanket. Amina held her breath until she saw him move his hand. The paramedics checked Mr. Jenkins's arm first. Amina saw him squeeze his wife's hand when she knelt beside him. She felt tears in her eyes, but she blinked them back. The paramedic smiled. "At Amina, you did great," he said softly. Marley wagged his tail as if he understood. The team loaded Mr. Jenkins into the ambulance. The fire crew cleared the broken branch from the path. Electricity workers arrived and fixed the swaying power line. People in raincoats came out of their houses to watch. Amina's mother wrapped her arm around her shoulders. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. Marley leaned into Amina, soaking wet but safe. All through the night, the storm raged on. Amina stayed at Mrs. Jenkins's house until her parents came. Marley dried by the fireplace, snoring softly on a rug. The Jenkinses offered warm tea and blankets. Amina's mother explained that Mr. Jenkins had a sprained shoulder, but would be fine. Relief washed over Amina. She smiled at Mrs. Jenkins, who squeezed her hand. Outside, the wind slowed to a soft whisper. Rain pattered gently like a lullaby. Amina felt safe knowing help was near. Tomorrow, she thought, we will thank everyone. Marley gave a happy bark and rested his head on her lap. Amina closed her eyes, exhausted but content. The morning after the storm, a soft light filtered through the blinds of Amina's bedroom. She stretched and listened to Marley's gentle snores from his bed on the floor. The night's thunder had given way to calm skies and birdsong. Amina slipped out of bed and padded across the room in her slippers. She knelt beside Marley and brushed his damp fur, remembering how he had stood guard through the wind and rain. He opened one eye, then the other, and gave a sleepy wag of his tail. Amina smiled and whispered, "You're the bravest dog I know." Downstairs, her mother was already at the kitchen table with a mug of tea and the neighborhood newsletter. The headline read, "Maple Street's Heroes. A girl and her dog saved the day." A photo beneath it showed Amina and Marley standing in front of the fallen oak branch the day before. Amina's cheeks warmed as she read the kind words from neighbors. Praise for her quick thinking and for Marley's fierce loyalty. Her mother put an arm around her shoulders. "You two are something special," she said. Amina nodded, still a bit shy, but her heart swelled with pride. After breakfast, neighbors began to arrive. Mrs. Jenkins, with her arm in a sling, limped down the front path. Mr. Jenkins followed, leaning on a walking stick. They carried a plate of cookies, still warm. "For our young heroes," Mrs. Jenkins said, offering the plate. Amina and Marley accepted gratefully. Next came the twins from next door, chalk in hand, ready to draw another be-kind heart on the sidewalk. Old Mr. Patel brought his pruning shears to help clear broken branches. Mrs. Rodriguez carried hot chocolate in a thermos. One by one, families joined, each bearing a small gift or tool. Together, they spent the morning restoring the corner of Maple and elm, they lifted leftover wood, swept up leaves, and planted new flowers where the oak had stood. Children laughed as they worked, passing shovels and watering cans. Marcus and his friends appeared, carrying paint cans to freshen the fence near Mrs. Jenkins's house. When Amina arrived, they offered her a brush, and she painted alongside. Marley chased after stray petals, nudging them gently back into place. The work felt good, not like a chore, but like a promise kept to each other and to their street. By midday, the path shone clean and bright. New saplings stood where the old oak had broken, tied gently to a stake for support. Simple wooden. Plaque beside it read, "In memory of kindness, 2025. Amina read the words aloud, hand on Marley's head. Tears came to her eyes, but they were happy tears. She looked around at the faces of neighbors, smiling, hopeful, united. It felt like a family, not just a group of houses on a street. That afternoon, the school called Amina and her mother for a special gathering. In the gym, banners hung from the walls. Courage, community, compassion. The principal stood at a small podium with Marley at her side, wearing a blue ribbon around his collar. Students filled the bleachers, whispering and pointing. The principal began, "Today we honor Amina and Marley for showing us what true bravery looks like." She handed Amina a certificate and Marley a small medal on a red ribbon. Amina felt her face flush as the crowd clapped and cheered. Marley barked once in surprise, then settled down to receive pats from children. When the ceremony ended, Amina spoke into the microphone. Her voice was soft at first, but it grew stronger as she went on. "I was scared," she admitted, "but I knew Marley would protect me. And I knew that neighbors would help, just like they did today. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about feeling that fear and choosing to do the right thing." Anyway, the room fell silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. Amina stepped down, heart racing, and hugged her mother. Marley leaned in to lick her cheek, and she laughed through her tears. That evening, Amina sat at her desk with a new notebook. She wrote the final lines of her story about neighborhood courage. She described the storm, the fallen branch, the fear in Mr. Jenkins's face, and the relief when the helpers arrived. She wrote about the fair, the cleanup, and today's planting ceremony. She ended with her own words, "When a young heart stands tall and a loyal friend stands strong, any challenge can be faced. And when neighbors join hands, no storm is too big to weather." Marley lay at her feet, tail thumping softly on the carpet. Over the next weeks, Maple Street settled into a gentle routine. The new sapling grew green leaves, and the be-kind hearts appeared in more driveways. Children played safely, and older kids offered to help younger ones with bikes and homework. Even Marcus volunteered in the after-school reading program. Using his free time to share stories with picture book toddlers, Amina passed him in the hall one day, and he gave her a thumbs up. She smiled back, grateful for how far they had come. Before long, the corner of Elm and Maple became known beyond the neighborhood. A local news crew came to interview Amina and Marley for a short segment. They asked what advice she had for other kids who feel scared. Amina looked at Marley, then back at the camera. "Find someone you trust," she said, "and find your own brave heart." "My brave heart came with 4 paws." She patted Marley's head. The dog gave a happy bark, and the crew laughed. When the story aired, families everywhere wrote in, thanking Amina and Marley for inspiring them. Some donated to plant trees in other towns. Others shared their own tales of neighborhood kindness. Amina read the messages with wide eyes, amazed that her small street could touch so many lives. She realized that courage and love could spread farther than she ever imagined. On a warm evening, not long after, Amina and Marley walked the street together. Fireflies danced in the grass, and the breeze carried the scent of jasmine and fresh paint. Lanterns strung across porches glowed softly. Neighbors sat outside, sipping tea and chatting. Amina paused by the sapling and ran her hand over its smooth trunk. Marley sniffed the base as if greeting a friend. Amina knelt to scratch him behind the ears. "I'm proud of us, boy," she whispered. "We did good. We changed things." Marley leaned into her and gave a contented sigh. Amina stood and took a deep breath of the night air. The street was peaceful, bright, and full of life. She glanced. At the house's itch, one a part of a bigger story of courage, love, and community. She felt her own story was just beginning. She walked home. Amina hummed a soft tune. Marley trotted beside her, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. Even if storms returned, she knew they could face them together. With her brave heart, Marley's loyal spirit, and a neighborhood that stood by them, there was nothing they could not overcome. That was the greatest lesson of all.